Hi, welcome to RebelTalk. I'm here with Nigel King. Nigel is a lecturer at NTU, specialising in entrepreneurship and systems analysis and design. Prior to NTU, Nigel was a Chief Information Security Officer for one of the largest edutech companies in the world, a company called PowerSchool. He also spent 22 years working at Oracle, specialising in architecture and security. And in former lives, he's been a developer, an accountant, and he's worked at small startups and multinationals across the world. Your background's in Silicon Valley, and we're here talking about the contrasting kind of cultures of Silicon Valley and the UK. So welcome, Nigel. Thank you for joining us. First question I wanted to ask you is, what's the biggest difference between working in Silicon Valley and working on the outside?
I suppose that the biggest difference that I notice that I've lost surrounding me kind of thing is this relentless sense of positivity, like everything being possible. Really, in the Valley, there was the sense that you need to do at least 6 impossible things before breakfast, and if it's getting towards lunchtime and you've not really disrupted 3 industries yet, you're kind of slacking. You really need to pull your socks up and get moving. I suppose that's one aspect of the culture. Another really interesting part of the culture is like differences in authority structures, which I don't see reflected outside of the Valley. Is very fashion based. I mean, what the current fashions are in technology mean that you can sway decisions quite a lot without having any sort of formal authority structure. So if you're an evangelist or you're a product visionary, that means you have a lot of credibility, but you may not have many people working for you. And you might find yourself on the other side of that coin, where you have a lot of people that are formally reporting to you, but you're doing stuff that's not that fashionable. You've just got a lot of work. You can't really sway decisions very easily. So I find that to be kind of an interesting contrast between the two.
Excellent. Well, Silicon Valley is held in high esteem the world over. Why do you think that model makes it successful?
Well, it's kind of interesting being here at like Rebel Recruit. Like part of what I think makes the Valley successful is there is a sense of sticking it to the man kind of thing. There is a sense of sort of rebellion there, which may dilute because a lot of the real older founders in the Valley are now sort of aging out kind of thing. But it's still moving there. I think also with the newer generations coming through, that sense that you're actually changing society with what you're doing there. So there is that sense as well. I think that there is a lot of the energy that place is sort of based on the cooperation with universities as well. I mean, me being here is kind of interesting. The energy is sort of coming in from like Stanford, from Berkeley and Santa Cruz and Santa Clara. And those universities do generate a lot of ideas. It's very fertile ground. The culture as a whole is a receiving bed trying to make those ideas grow. But of course, part of that is there's got to be some tolerance for failure, because these are untested ideas, really. And to be honest, I think even the word failure kind of has a different meaning here. I've kind of come to understand it differently here. But here, when I think of failure, I think of myself living in a shop door front in a cardboard box, There I think of failure as like, markets explored, experiments conducted, tests proven, that kind of stuff. That's not to say that there aren't plenty of people living in cardboard boxes in Silicon Valley, but they're sort of outside the mindset and bubble of what Silicon Valley is. So I'm really not part of that culture.
Excellent. Well, you worked at Oracle for many years. Oracle is a household name. What made Oracle successful over that period? I think you were there for 22 years.
Correct, 22 years. So I started off in the sales force there. I was actually running like pre-sales SWAT team across most of Europe, which was great fun to be in different European cities every day. And then moved out to the States because I managed to convince them that I knew something about how the application should be architected. It's really always defined itself in terms of who it's fighting, to be honest. Whoever the enemy is really was the thing that really defined us. We might have been like a squabbling rabble internally, but as soon as there's a clearly identified enemy, suddenly the lines form and the shields go up, and you've got a clear outside enemy to fight. We also courted controversy a lot. So if there was ever a controversial statement to make, we made sure that we made it.
Okay.
And made sure that we made it against someone that was bigger than us. So we'd sidle up to whoever was the biggest guy in the prison exercise yard and pick a fight with him, just to make sure that in the press we were seen as a scrapper, and that we were seen as always being controversial. Sometimes, of course, that backfired on us a little bit. I know that most recently that controversy has really been between Larry Ellison and Jeff Bezos. They've been having a spat in the press. I think though secretly the thing that's not very obvious is that we made the humble IT department our friends. We brought a lot of alliances in humble IT departments. We made them feel important.
Yeah.
We tried to take something that was not seen as a very glamorous profession, and we cast sort of some awe of both professionalism and kind of mystique over it, having a CEO that was flying jets and driving fast cars and that kind of stuff. And of course, that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, those might have been just developers, and they moved on. They became managers of IT departments, and so more recently they're sort of CIOs. So we've kind of, that's our tribe. That's we looked after them, they looked after us on the way through.
That's interesting, because I think what you're kind of describing there is what many of us kind of see Silicon Valley on the outside as being, as very kind of, winner takes all, kind of tech bro-ish, you're either with us or against us. And I suppose it adds a bit of glamour, to that kind of Silicon Valley scene. But there's got to be some downsides to that, surely. So what were the downsides that you experienced there?
Downsides that I saw, communities kind of break themselves apart because of the income disparities. Because people that are working in high tech tend to get paid partly through share options. Their money comes in lumps, and they try and move that into less risky areas. So like housing markets just go berserk. That's one real problem. Try and find someone to teach primary school when everyone else is being paid in share options is really hard. Talent becomes very scarce. So charlatans abound. You've got a lot of people that can, without testing, can appear to be very knowledgeable, but actually do have no skills. You have to invest in filtering quite a lot and be very alert to people that are moving within an organization because they found a way in without proving out their talents, and now you may have inherited someone that actually doesn't have any skills. That having been said, there's people that I thought had no skills that went on to be CEOs of large companies. So,
wow.
So your own filtering mechanisms might not pick up the skills that they have. Obviously, there's this huge cultural mismatch between Silicon Valley and essentially everywhere else, and there's also a great deal of insulation between them. So the sensors and reading mechanisms to find out what you've done in the world are not that great, right? Because it's also, because of that tolerance for failure, you just dust yourself down and do the next thing, but you may have caused disasters in other areas.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So it's kind of like a protected bubble, it sounds like.
Very much.
Now, it sounds like a kind of high octane environment. I can see the attraction of working there. Do you have any regrets of leaving that kind of environment?
Some personal issues that sort of brought me back to the UK as well. So I got to separate out those from the sort of business issues. And I have to say, like being in a university environment, I find that like being amongst bright young minds to be very intoxicating. Actually, that's been both intoxicating and refreshing at the same time. And I have to say that the inherent talent that I see in the student population kind of shames me. I think they're in general much cleverer than me, and yet I can kind of show that I've done done some interesting things in the world. So if I can do it, they can do it too. Try and shine that light a little bit on what their paths forward might be, and also try and give them the sense that the world of work. It's intoxicating for me to show them that the world of work can be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And that you can sort of try some things out, make some mistakes, and the learning itself is something that you can bank as the asset that was created out of whatever it was that you tried.
You mentioned the word fun there, and again, I think when we see Silicon Valley from the outside, we see the cool offices, we see the scooters, and people seemingly having fun. But I think underneath that, there's a bit of an undercurrent of, as you kind of mentioned, real kind of pressure to be the best. Was it ever a case that every day you just woke up and you were just like glad to be there, or were there days where you woke up and you were like, I wish I could just be somewhere a little bit more serene and maybe easier?
It's certainly a high energy place. It's also quite a hostile place, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that sense of of fun. You're always competing. The sense of competition, though, I think is much more the sense of competition that you'd have in sport than you would have on a battlefield. That it is the successful companies are those that can create a sense of team. If the only way that you can create a sense of team is through that sense of, well, we have an enemy, you might be recruiting people who are always willing to fight. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why Oracle was both successful, but the culture was also maybe a little bit too intense.
Yeah.
Because your recruiting profile was one that you got people that were very willing to fight, but maybe not having a great sense of the team that they were on. Certainly that was things that I found refreshing in working for Power School, was right away from day one, that building the sense of team and our identity and the value that we delivered was very much part of what was in the management ethos, and suffused within the organization very, very quickly, which is, I think, kind of incredible considering that they were like a carve out, and that their own identity was had to be recovered from the organisation that they were part of until quite recently.
Okay, well, we talked about our impression of Silicon Valley. I'm really interested in kind of how they see us. Like, what is their view of Brits and the British tech scene?
So I think the view of Brit, I think in two parts, like Brits and the British tech scene. So those are interestingly related but somewhat separate questions. So I think they're bemused by our formality. That is something that took me a while to understand, that you would be in a room where everybody's shouting at each other, and when you waited for some silence and then you would speak and the whole room goes silent.
Did you ever put your hand up?
I often put my hand up. Because and it bemuses people that you're not willing to wrestle in the mud.
Yeah.
So I think they quite enjoy and are bemused by our formality. They take us quite seriously. So I think people make all sorts of positive assumptions about you because you are British. And I think that extends into sense of engineering. I think even now there's respect for engineering talent that comes from the United Kingdom. I think Europe more broadly, actually, that there's some sense of professionalism in engineering, which comes from, I think, still having an industrial background. It feels that it might have extended through generations.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, so I'm going to do a bit of a thought experiment. You are the founder of a small startup here in the UK. It's a tech startup, great product, great ideas, and you really want to rocket the business. What 2-3 things could you take from the Silicon Valley model to apply to an ambitious young tech business here in the UK?
I would say, don't be afraid of failure. That's one thing that I could completely take from what was the way that people structured their careers over in Silicon Valley. That like maybe you had a successful exit, maybe you didn't have a successful exit, but if you did something in the startup world, it looked good on your resume, and then you'd have to track somewhere in your resume the opportunity to do something in the startup world, because it says something about you and your attitude towards risk. That even if this thing just goes into dust, that we at least take the fact that we have a reasonable attitude towards risk towards whoever our next employer is.
Excellent. Okay, Nigel, thank you for taking part in RebelTalk. It's been great speaking to you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.